Hey guys, today I wanted to make a video about liberalism and international politics because I feel like a lot of people tend to make like very bad arguments against liberals or tend to suck at those YouTube debates or online discussions because I feel like they instantly fall into those liberal traps. And I would like to just like give you an overview how to debate with liberals and how you can actually even defend radical politics. To be clear, I'm not making moral judgments here. I'm trying to just provide you with like a moral, a moral framework or understanding, a materialistic understanding of why certain human political movements tend to radicalize. So liberals are obviously masters at media manipulation and rhetoric. And they know where to fight. They will like concede, for example, why a lot of Palestinian youngsters have valid reasons to join quote unquote radical movements such as Hamas. They will concede to you on that. They will say, like, okay, fine, maybe his family has been through the Nakba or he has suffered from Israeli state aggression, and they will justify that. And then a lot of Middle Eastern people or brown people or something like that, they will say like, oh, look, actually these Westerners are actually kind of understanding and empathic, but in reality, they are not really like that empathic, unfortunately. Um, and I'm not saying this to this Westerners. I'm saying that most human beings in general are not really very empathic beings. To be fair, now they will concede you on that. They will say like, okay, fine, they have valid reasons to become radicalized and join radical movements such as Hamas, but they will not explain the rationality why movements such as Hamas are are very radical to begin with. They don't understand, or they actually do understand, but they will not never concede why they have to be radical. Obviously, sometimes in movies we do get like a little bit of a glimpse why you have to be radical, quote unquote. Why do you have to be of a higher morale, right? I believe in a lot of movies, be it Braveheart or The King, movies like that. There is always like there is this weak army, and they have to fight like a superior force. So the king goes to his troops and his soldiers, and he gives them this motivational speech. And sure, perhaps a lot of these motivational speeches might have helped or something like that. But the goal is basically to raise the morale, right? Now, in the modern era, in modern conflicts, there is something similar, but basically you have to, you just know, first of all, you just know, like in the situation of Hamas, that you can't really compete with Israel on economic terms, or be it Iran or the Taliban and so forth. You just know you can't like compete economically, even if you try to, you know, compete economically, it will at least like take like 50 years or 100 years potentially, right? So what they actually have to compete on is on morale, on ideological fever. They have to be more. I believe there is like this famous saying of Khalid, one of the early Muslim generals, who said like, we love that more than you guys love life. So you have to be more ideologically driven than your enemies. So you can, and a lot of people are actually on the internet. They are like the most radical. They become basically edge lords, right? Because they understand like, okay, their political movement is down bad, so they try to compensate by being as radical as possible. Now, of course, like just like in everything in life, be it love, politics, war, economics, finances, and so forth, there is this type of mathematical logic, right? Like assume that you are into stocks, options trading, or something like that, and you have like 1 million in a bank account on a bank account. You can basically drop that 1 million on a safe ETF fund, and you can basically make shitloads of money, right? But assume that you have just like 10,000 USD and you want to make shitloads of money, you have to engage in like very risky bets. The same is true for everything in life, and the goal, I'm not trying to argue what you should do or what your political movement should do, but I'm just merely arguing like there is like a sweet spot. Now obviously liberals will überhaupt deny that there is anything like this to begin with. Liberals basically assume that most of humanity is just like a blank slate, and you have like societies A versus society B, and if society B has like more has the right economic policies and the right respect for individual freedoms, then they will always triumph and come on top of society B. Even though throughout history we have seen often the opposite, be it the war between Sparta and Athens, be it the war between the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth between and Russia. So, or even if we look at America, like okay, fair enough, America has had its civil war, but if everybody in America has like a bunch of guns, it doesn't really matter because America doesn't really have like dangerous neighbors, except maybe Canada or Mexico. But assume the same in like Turkey, because in Turkey, Greece could instantly arm the Kurds or Kurdish militants, or Iran could flare up dissidents in Turkey and so forth. So a lot of this has to do with like your geography, your demographics, and so forth. But the reason why, and liberals don't want to believe this blank slate theory because they are just like really good people, like really good religious people. They rather want to believe in this because it defends or justifies endless warfare. Because eventually you can, like, if you just accept like the liberal parameters, and I feel like a lot of people tend to do this, is like when it comes to like women's rights or like rights towards minorities and stuff like that, is that obviously Palestinians, because they are poorer, because they are because of these strategic necessities and social necessities, they have to be more socially conservative or socially more radical, right? So eventually they will always have to be more radical than Israeli Jews. And for that reason only, the Israeli Jews within those liberal parameters, even if they just level the shit out of Gaza, they will always be considered or justified more, you know, more superior or more good as per liberal parameters. You can never discuss that. You can never really win this, even when it comes to Iran. Obviously, when I have been to Iran, I tend to love Iranians, by the way. Iranians are like very civilized and very lovely people. But, even you can even if we just purely argue per liberal parameters, right? Like if America were to invade Iran and just carpet bomb like major cities or something like that and occupy the whole of Iran, according to a liberal, minds, this is like a positive thing because you are eventually just liberalizing that. You are basically just like liberalizing that society. You can basically also justify this by carpet bombing Palestinian civilians or Arabs or something like that, because eventually you can basically say like, okay, fine, the average Arab has like pretty illiberal views on women or gays, on society and so forth. So you can basically just endlessly defend genocide in even them. This is why even when I'm discussing this with like Turkish leftist friends, I feel like their arguments are just very weak, because some of my Turkish leftist friends, they actually commended Israel because it has, objectively speaking, like we can kind of accept that Israel, compared to like other Middle Eastern societies, is kind of like a free and open society. But the thing is that the parameters that we are using for Israel or any other Middle Eastern states are so arbitrary, so subjective, so out of context. There are too many variables involved to determine how much your society can be liberal. Because if you have like the backing of the U.S. military, obviously you can be more lax regarding these things. And I believe that the less, just as I said before, like the more inferior you are, militarily speaking, the more strict you have to be domestically. So a lot of leftists tend to fall short on that, because we can obviously give the example of Afghanistan. Obviously a lot of leftists will oppose like the U.S. military occupation of Afghanistan. They also like, yeah, this is like very ridiculous and so forth. But at the same time, like if you go ask those leftists, like, what do you think about like the Soviets in in Central Asia, where they quote unquote liberated those Central Asian Muslims or people from like tyrannical Islamic backwardness, they will say like, oh yeah, that's a positive thing. But then like there was like I believe this funny clip with Hassan Piker, where they just go like to the Sentinel Islands, and somebody says like, you know, the U.S. military should occupy the Sentinel Islands, which is like those, you know, untouched, uncharted area nearby India, right? And just bring like feminism to them or something like that. And Hassan laughed it off, but you know, from like a leftist position, from like a less leftist POV, you can't really oppose this because even like Karl Marx defended like the American North against the American South simply because it was more industrialized, and so leftists tend to be like in this rock and a hard place because they can't really like oppose liberalism, but they want to oppose it. But so they feel like, you know, and in my opinion, like, and this is like the Carl Schmittian position, you might say, is that I feel like we just should just get rid of all these liberal parameters because I feel like they're just extremely fallacious.